Ever wondered how English, with its 1.5 billion speakers scattered across the globe like misplaced Scrabble tiles, collectively wielding over 750,000 words, became the gloriously messy linguistic smorgasbord it is today? Well, unlike languages that politely stayed within the lines of their country of origin, English is a linguistic magpie, a word-hoarding kleptomaniac built on a foundation of conquest and cross-cultural pollination. It's picked up bits and bobs from other languages with all the grace of a raccoon rummaging through your trash, evolving and adapting as it went global. And nowhere is this more evident than in the great linguistic divide, the grammatical Grand Canyon separating two nations ostensibly joined at the hip: British English and American English. Today, my friends, we delve into the fascinating, often baffling and occasionally infuriating world of transatlantic spelling discrepancies. Our first contestant in this grammar cage match is the humble verb to enroll, meaning, well, to sign up for something, be it a pottery class, a Zumba marathon, or a questionable multi-level marketing scheme. Now, you might think a word as straightforward as enroll wouldn't spark an international incident, but you'd be wrong. Because across the pond, our British brethren, in all their stiff upper lip glory, insist on adding an extra L at the end, like a linguistic pinky extended while sipping tea. Is it necessary? Debatable? Does it make them sound vaguely more intelligent? Absolutely, but we here at Intellius are all about fairness and balance. So, whether you prefer your enrollment streamlined or superfluously elongated, we say, you do you. Just don't come crying to us when your autocorrect starts throwing shade. Next up, we tackle the eternally optimistic fulfill, a word that conjures up images of self-actualization seminars and inspirational cat posters. But hold on to your motivational mugs, folks, because this is where things get really wild. The Brits, in their infinite wisdom, decided that fulfilled just wasn't fulfilling enough, and once again bestowed upon it the gift of an extra L. Now, we Americans, being a practical bunch, are all about efficiency. We like our vowels short, our consonants impactful, and our spellings as streamlined as our drive-thrus. So, naturally, we scoffed at this unnecessary consonant clutter. But hey, who are we to judge? Maybe that extra L is what gives the Queen her staying power. We're just saying. Let's be honest, skillful is a word you want on your side. It implies competence, mastery, the ability to parallel park in one go without breaking a sweat, or someone else's side mirror. It's a word that commands respect, like Beyoncé or tax deductible. But even here, in the land of adjectives that denote excellence, the great transatlantic spelling divide rears its ugly head. The Brits, bless their souls, like to keep things traditional, clinging to the single L like it's the last scone at high tea. Americans, however, embrace the double L with the enthusiasm of a toddler discovering they have two hands. Chapter 4, Analog versus Analog to UE, or not to UE. That is the question, again. Analog, a word that simultaneously evokes feelings of nostalgia for simpler times and confusion about how anything actually worked back then. But before we spiral down a rabbit hole of rotary phones and dial-up internet, let's address the elephant in the room, or rather the UA at the end of the word. British English, in all its vintage glory, insists on keeping those two little vowels on life support, clinging to the past like a cassette tape refusing to be rewound. Americans, meanwhile, have embraced the digital age with open arms and ruthlessly efficient spellings. Chapter 5. Monologue versus monologue one you to rule them all. Monologue, a word that strikes fear into the hearts of anyone who's ever been cornered at a party by a distant relative with a penchant for long-winded stories about their prize-winning begonias. It's a word that conjures up images of Shakespearean actors, bellowing soliloquies, and politicians filibustering their way into the history books. And yet, even in this arena of verbal grandstanding, the British and American spellings can't seem to agree. The Brits, champions of the extended vowel sequence, cling to their ogue ending with the tenacity of a barnacle on a cruise ship. Americans, ever practical, prefer the streamlined OG because who has time for extra letters when you're busy captivating an audience with your verbal dexterity? Chapter 6, Cataloguing the Chaos. Catalogue versus catalogue, a word that evokes images of endless possibilities from mail-order mayhem to the vast libraries of knowledge contained within the internet. It's a word that whispers of organization, categorization, and the comforting illusion of control in a world that often feels anything but. But alas, even in the realm of alphabetized bliss, the U gremlins strike again. British English, ever the stickler for tradition, insists on the full OG treatment, while Americans, in their infinite quest for efficiency, opt for the streamlined OG. Chapter 7, Meter versus Meter, a measure of our differences. The metric system. A system so elegant, so logical, so utterly baffling to the average American that it might as well be written in hieroglyphics. But before we delve into the mysteries of kilometers and liters, let's address the elephant in the room, or rather the re at the end of meter. The Brits, those champions of all things metric, naturally embrace the re-ending with the same fervour they reserve for tea and queuing. Americans, however, remain stubbornly attached to their inches, feet and miles, clinging to the ER ending like it's the last lifeboat on the Titanic. A fibre, a word that conjures up images of both healthy digestion and the magical threads that connect our digital world. But before we get lost in a rabbit hole of roughage and Ethernet cables, let's address the spelling elephant in the room. Once again, British English takes the grammatically proper route, favouring the re-ending with the same unwavering dedication they show to the monarchy. Americans, meanwhile, prefer the simplicity of ER, because who has time for extra letters when you're busy trying to increase your daily fibre intake or download the entirety of Netflix? Centre, a word that evokes images of balance, equilibrium, and the elusive middle ground in a world increasingly polarized. But even in this realm of neutrality, the re versus debate rages on. The Brits, in their infinite wisdom, stick to the re-ending like a compass needle always pointing towards true north. Americans, however, prefer the simplicity of ER, because who has time for extra letters when you're busy trying to find the center of a bagel? Tire, a word that evokes images of road trips, traffic jams, and the occasional unfortunate encounter with a pothole. But before we get bogged down in the logistics of roadside assistance, let's address the spelling elephant in the room. The Brits, bless their hearts, stick to the wire ending with the tenacity of a well-inflated radial. Americans, however, prefer the straightforward IR, because who has time for extra letters when you're dealing with a flat? Well, there you have it. The epic battle between British and American English rages on, a testament to the ever-evolving nature of language and our uncanny ability to complicate even the simplest of things. But who are we to judge? After all, language is a living, breathing thing, constantly adapting and changing to reflect the whims of its speakers. So, whether you prefer your spelling sprinkled with extra U's or streamlined for maximum efficiency, remember this: it's not about who's right or wrong, it's about communication. And if a few rogue vowels get trampled in the process, well, that's just the price we pay for speaking the most wonderfully weird and wonderfully expressive language on earth. In the grand scheme of things, does it really matter whether you spell it color or color, realize or realize? Probably not, but isn't it fun to argue about it anyway?